The story begins on a highway packed with honking cars, caught in a traffic jam. One of the drivers wonders what caused the delay and why a clear road is suddenly blocked. Glancing in the side mirror, the driver notices our boy walking steadily through the center of the highway and is struck by his unusual presence. The driver considers stepping out to ask if there's been an accident ahead, but before he can, our boy leaps onto the roof of a nearby truck. Suddenly, a loud sound echoes from up ahead, drawing the attention of the drivers who begin exiting their vehicles. Above them, a massive gate is opening. Our boy shouts a warning for everyone to evacuate immediately, urging them to flee as monsters are about to emerge. Panic sets in, and the drivers abandon their cars, scattering in every direction and leaving him alone. Our boy readies himself, channeling a fierce aura into his sword. As monsters begin pouring from the gate, he takes a powerful swing, obliterating them in a single strike before any can escape. Moments later, reinforcements from the raider forces arrive. One of the raiders quickly senses something amiss, realizing that since the gate is still open, monsters should still be emerging. Yet, there are no corpses in sight. The raiders gasp in shock as they witness an advanced monster, known as the Quadra Drake, designated hostile creature number 43, emerge from the gate. Everyone in the area feels the intense pressure, aware that only the highest-ranked raiders, those of Goldmark level or above, are typically equipped to face such a beast. The Quadra Drake begins gathering flames in its mouth, preparing to unleash its attack, unaware that our boy is already positioned behind it. In one swift, decisive motion, he cuts the Quadra Drake in half, the impact of its massive body hitting the ground causing an explosive shockwave. The raiders stare in awe, wondering who this mysterious figure could be. Then, one of them spots the emblem on his jacket, a golden dragon, marking him as Lee Seaman, one of the strongest raiders. But before he achieved such strength, there was a different story, a story of his past self. Years ago, someone told Seaman, for some, taking a single step may mean nothing. But for those who have fallen, that step can feel like scaling a cliff. Remember, when helping someone who's down, even one word can be enough. The mysterious figure then told him seriously that he was not a coward. Those words brought tears to Seaman's eyes and changed everything for him. Since the appearance of monsters that tear humans apart, the world has been divided into raiders and non-raiders. Later, at the Raider Management Bureau, the receptionist informs him that he can go in now, to which he responds with a tense yes. Prospective raiders, or awakened ones, must regularly have their aura levels checked at the Bureau. To become a raider, they first undergo an awakening judgment to determine if they possess any aura, followed by a qualification exam. Only those with aura levels above a certain threshold are eligible to take the tests. Seaman knocks on the laboratory door and greets the technician inside. She greets him back, noting that since he's done this a few times, she'll skip the usual explanations. He nods in agreement. She then asks if he's aware that he'll need to enlist in the military next year, mentioning that his evaluations have delayed it, but they can't postpone it any longer. He confirms, saying he's aware of the situation. The technician then suggests arranging counseling for him, saying he can't continue like this indefinitely. Surprised, Seaman politely declines, saying he'd just like to take the test and leave. She agrees, reminding him of his military enlistment deadline. He lies down in the machine, and moments later, she informs him that his aura level is 103, unchanged from last year. Aura levels typically begin around 100 and gradually increase, but Seaman's level has remained stagnant since he was first awakened years ago. Despite all his efforts and training, that number has never budged. She hands him a form to sign, and he reflects on how he once believed he'd eventually reach his goal. But reality has been harsh. He stands up and thanks the technician. Hours later, night has fallen, and he returns to his cramped, messy, dimly lit room. Heading straight to his computer, he remembers the game rewards he was expecting. But instead, he sees a surprising notification. Qualification requirements confirmed. Confused, he clicks on the Transcendent Network button below it. His screen reveals a tip board, a special member board, and a general member board. Intrigued, he clicks on the general member board and finds it filled with posts from various people. Chuckling, he stretches, thinking that some of these posters must still be caught up in their high school syndromes and could use a dose of reality. Scrolling through, he leaves a teasing comment on Damu Guang's post, thanking him for his wise words but jokingly adding, he can almost hear something breaking, like his parents' backs. He humorously calls Damu Guang a basement dweller, advising him to take a walk outside. Closing the site, he hopes his comment snaps Damagwang back to his senses. Deciding to check the news, Seaman sees that the raider An Sung-jun's rank has been raised from gold to platinum, leaving him shocked and in disbelief at An Sung-jun's incredible achievement. As he read through the comments on the news, Seaman noticed people praising Sung-jun, which ignited his anger. His fists clenched as he recalled how he and Sung-jun had once faced each other daily, only for Sung-jun to crush him without mercy. Now, that same man had risen to the platinum rank, fueling Seaman's frustration even further. In a surge of irritation, he grabbed a note detailing his training regimen, 300 squats a day and an 8-kilometer run. Staring at it in frustration, he crumpled it, feeling that everything around him was becoming unbearably annoying. Turning to his laptop, he began typing, admitting to himself that he felt like a failure. He had dropped out of school, hoping to become a raider, yet after years of effort, he remained unqualified for even the basic exam. Just then, a notification flashed, confirming his qualification, leaving him puzzled as to why this mysterious site kept reappearing. Browsing further, he noticed a new member with the ID Wandering Beggar Kim Bonghak and curiously asked Bonghak why he'd chosen that name. Even suggesting with a hint of sarcasm that he might be financially struggling, Seaman playfully offered to donate some money, claiming he was a raider. Bonghak took offense, calling Seaman's comments impudent and questioning the term raider, speculating that it must belong to Seaman's dimension. He went on to ask Seaman's age, calling him brother in a familiar tone. Unfazed, Seaman asked Bonghak's age, to which Bonghak replied that he had stopped counting after reaching 140, noting that age held little importance for those considered transcendent. Amused, Seaman chuckled, finding Bonghak's dedication to his character intriguing. Continuing to scroll, Seaman noticed a comment from Grand Wizard Ileana, mentioning her desire to meet him and her plan to gather the necessary points for the encounter. Playfully, he responded that he'd locate her with ease, unaware that a strange force had started forming behind him. Feeling confident, he encouraged her to come meet him, oblivious to the portal materializing directly behind him. Suddenly, he heard a voice from behind, asking him what he would do if they actually met. Startled, he turned to find a woman floating inside the gate, her eyes fixed on him with a penetrating gaze. She demanded to know if he was the unemployed bum Lee Seaman. Shocked and speechless, Seaman struggled to process what he was seeing. She began to walk closer to him and looked him over, assessing him with a stern expression. With a frown, she observed him closely, intent on understanding the man she had come to meet. The woman stepped out of the portal, causing Seaman to scream in fear. Suddenly, a root shot toward him, wrapping tightly around his body. She told him to stop flailing, and though he closed his mouth in terror, he continued to struggle. Confused by his reaction, she asked why he seemed so weak. Stammering, he begged her to spare him, but she simply remarked that his skills were worse than a bug's and questioned how he even managed to connect to the transcendent network. She then flipped him upside down, teasingly calling him fatso and poking his face as she demanded to know his identity. He promised to tell her everything if she just let him down. She released him, and he dropped hard onto his room's floor. Dazed, he looked up at her and stammered out a question, asking who she was. She introduced herself as Liana, reminding him of how confidently he'd been talking earlier. She then asked if he'd been truthful about being a raider. He nervously clarified, explaining that he was on his way to becoming one. Annoyed, she demanded to know if it was true or not. He explained that in his world, people with aura hunted beasts and were called raiders, though not everyone could harness aura. He was an awakened one, so he did possess a bit of aura. Unconvinced, she ordered him to show it to her. With considerable effort, he managed to summon a small, flickering aura, but it faded almost immediately. Disappointed, she asked if that was all, leaving him confused by her expectations. Frustrated, she slapped his face, expressing her disbelief. Her power shook the room, sending scattered objects skidding across the messy floor. Overwhelmed by the force she radiated, Seaman realized she was truly a transcendent being, a power beyond human comprehension. She approached him, her expression fierce, and he cowered, covering his face and begging her to spare his life. Outside, someone knocked on his door, concerned, and asked if he was all right. He quickly assured them that he was fine. As they heard people outside discussing what seemed like an earthquake, Liana regained her composure. She muttered in frustration, lamenting that she'd used up all her save points because of him. Angrily, she demanded to know how someone like him had managed to access the transcendent network. Stammering, he admitted he didn't know and explained he just turned on his laptop. She questioned what a laptop was, so he pointed to the device on his desk, describing it as the thing with the light. Curiously, she inspected it, musing on whether it was this world's communication tool, then ordered him to keep explaining. He insisted that there wasn't much else to say. Noticing a pile of notes behind his laptop, she asked him to at least tell her about himself. He shrugged, saying there wasn't much worth sharing, that he'd been through a lot like everyone else and ended up like this. Sitting in his computer chair, she remarked on the pitiful state of his life, to which he reluctantly agreed. She surprised him by stating he must have tried his best at some point, asking if she was right. Her seemingly indifferent words held a hint of comfort, encouraging him to open up. Seaman shared that he was an orphan who'd been fortunate to be adopted by his current parents. He'd been evaluated as an awakened one in school, but severe bullying led him to drop out. After that, he began stress eating, and despite years of effort, his oral level hadn't improved in 6 years. Lina called his story dull, and he agreed with a resigned nod. She then rose, saying it was time for her to leave. He quickly stood, relieved, and echoed her sentiment. Heading toward the gate, she warned him that if he acted up on the bulletin board again, she'd come back to kill him, ordering him to post an apology. He nodded, assuring her he'd keep it in mind. Just before stepping through the gate, she paused, reminding him that while the world was inherently unfair, he was still human and had to live. She urged him to go out and make something of himself. He hesitated, then asked if they could ever meet again. With a smile, she told him that if he truly wanted that, he'd have to transcend himself. Then, she returned to her world. As the gate closed, Seaman picked up a petal she'd left behind. Understanding that she'd meant for him to one day stand as her equal, he stared at the petal, wondering if he, too, could one day become transcendent. That's all for today, guys. See you on the next upload.